Hey everyone, you're listening to InfoQuench with Jeff
and Amy,
a podcast with tips to make your life easier,
covering pop culture, parenting, travel, minimalism, and more.
Hey everybody, and welcome to InfoQuench. I'm your host, Jeff.
And I'm Amy.
And this podcast, we are going to be talking about something that is very raw in a lot of the eastern seaboard of North America and the Bahamas, hurricanes.
Yes, so because of our recent storm, we thought it would be a good topic to do some interesting facts around hurricanes.
Well, there's a lot of things about hurricanes I don't know.
And a lot I learned doing the research.
And I'm about to learn because I haven't looked at your notes as usual. As per usual, I am not prepared.
But before we get into hurricanes, let's talk tennis.
Oh, man. Andreescu. She's amazing. She did it. Like I was so incredibly impressed and, and proud. I'm proud to be a Canadian, having, a Canadian woman, a woman from Canada at the top of the U.S. Open is incredible.
And she's so
and
humble,
the Rogers Cup.
And it was a wonderful match. And
I'll be honest, and Amy too. Like we're not sports people. We don't watch sports regularly. I watch hockey in the winter and stuff a little bit, but like I can't remember the last time I watched a full tennis match.
I know, and it actually was happening as the Hurricane Dorian was hitting St. John, New Brunswick, which is where we record our podcast out of. And we were lucky; our power flicked off and on. Just the once.
Yeah.
Came straight back on. But I know that there are a lot of people still without power, still recovering from this massive storm that went through. So our thoughts are with all of those people who are getting through that as they. Yeah,
Nova Scotia is still recuperating, and a lot of people still don't have power. But you know what? You see all these really wonderful stories on the news about people coming together in a community. Because I saw one photo where, this one home did have power, and they made a power station for powering phones up and stuff, which is so cool.
Oh, that's
people
awesome.
People could just drop by and plug their phone in and have power.
There's some good people in the world.
Yeah.
We lost a lot of big, beautiful trees, and I know that there was a lot of people who had significant damage to their homes and businesses. So,
but no one was killed, as far as I know. Which in Canada,
in our region, but but there definitely were some. Yeah, there's still a death toll from Dorian. So let's get into some interesting facts about hurricanes, and I'm going to start with number one. A hurricane is actually a tropical cyclone.
Oh, yes.
So the reason it's called tropical cyclone, and this may seem obvious, but some of these facts are a little more interesting than others. But tropical refers to the geographical origin where they originate, which is almost exclusively over tropical seas. And then cyclone,
warm water.
Exactly.
Basically.
And then cyclone obviously refers to the cycle of their winds. So moving in a circle, we're all familiar with sort of that image that they always have on weather channels.
Yes.
I'm at a loss for words.
With the eye.
It's not good when you're actually trying to record a podcast.
Oh, you're doing great.
Apologies.
Oh, you're doing great. We're not really rusty. We just we're lazy. We get our podcast done the day before it's supposed to go out. So
I know we've got to. Yeah,
it's all right.
That's okay.
It's all right. We always come through though.
Number two, hurricanes are actually only called hurricanes around North America. So as mentioned, they are tropical cyclones, and they're named differently depending on where they form. So if it is a mature tropical cyclone, with significant wind force, and it's in the Atlantic or northeastern Pacific, it's called a hurricane.
Yes.
Which is what we get here. But that same type of storm is actually called a typhoon when it's near Asia in the northwest Pacific.
Yep.
And then they would simply refer to it as just a cyclone, because these are all tropical cyclones. It's just a cyclone in the South Pacific or Indian Ocean. So pretty much everywhere else in the world is just called a cyclone. So if you've ever heard hurricane, typhoon, and cyclone and wondering what they were, well, they're all tropical cyclones. The only difference is that they're originating in different parts of the world.
Whatever they're called, they are like forces of nature to be reckoned with, for sure.
Well, and they normally start out as a tropical storm, and we'll often hear that word when it
That's
moves
what they
from,
downgrade to, right?
Yes,
as well.
And so it's all based on wind speeds. So once the wind speeds exceed a certain amount, then they become at a hurricane force,
level,
or
right.
cyclone, or typhoon. Number 3.
How many of them are there?
11.
11. Okay, we're
I
on
don't know if
number
I
3.
said yes. 11 interesting facts.
Yes.
So buckle down, people.
Buckle down.
They're coming at you.
Batten the hatches.
Number 3, hunker down. Isn't that what we always say? Hunker.
Hunker down, batten the hatches, which it must be an old, military Navy term, batten the hatches.
As much as storms are awful, I think people really get jazzed up about getting ready for them, don't they?
Oh yeah,
it's all it's all about the storm chips.
There's something exciting about storms.
Everyone's rushing out to the grocery store and they're tying stuff down and
it's not it's not always a super enjoyable thing, but I think it is exciting to a degree. Even
there's a lot of conversation around it.
Even if it ends up being the most negative experience of your life, it's still in the foreset of it all, or whatever. Before it happens, it's exciting.
Yes. So number 3 is, I found this fascinating because I didn't know this, that the wind direction. So again, you picture that hurricane swirling on the television. It's based on what hemisphere it's in. So in the southern hemisphere, it rotates in a clockwise direction. And if in the northern hemisphere, where we're at, it rotates in an anti-clockwise direction.
It's like a giant toilet.
Yes, you're right. That's right. It's like a toilet. And it's the reason it does that, it's what's called Coriolis force, and that's produced by the Earth's rotation. Similar to the toilets, I guess.
Yeah. The centrifugal force.
And of course, the force of the hurricane determines whether it's a category 1 through 5.
Yeah.
It's based on wind speeds and also the potential to cause damage.
Storm surge as well, I think, is a big factor.
Yes, definitely. A lot of the destruction is related to storm surge. Number 4, size varies dramatically. So tropical cyclones can be anywhere from only 100 kilometers wide to 2,000 kilometers in diameter. And so
there's a 2,000 kilometer diameter hurricane on record. Is that right?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, 2,220 kilometers in diameter.
What hurricane was that? Do you know?
So that's called Typhoon Tip.
Oh.
In the Philippines, they actually gave it a different name called Typhoon Warling. It was in 1979.
Wow.
And just to kind of give you an idea, that diameter of that hurricane, 2,220 kilometers, is more than half the width of the continental United States.
Wow.
So you can picture half of the United States covered by a hurricane.
And what category hurricane was that?
It wasn't listed where I was, but it must have been a 5. I can't imagine it would have been.
That would have been completely devastating.
Now, I compared it to the width of the United States just for perspective, because
of course you did.
That was the comparison was given, and everything's always compared to the United States.
Yeah.
But it should be noted that it was a typhoon, so it wasn't actually. It didn't hit the United States.
Well, that's good.
It was a Pacific typhoon.
Did it make landfall though? Anywhere, or did it stay at sea? I mean, I know you're not like a expert on this particular typhoon, but you have to call it the proper thing.
I don't have all the details.
But I'm just curious, and now I need to do some research of my own on this particular.
You do.
It's probably the biggest typhoon ever, right? Like ever recorded.
That's it.
Okay.
That much I know.
Okay.
It's the largest one.
So I imagine that the eye of the storm was probably as big as like Texas or something.
I also don't have that information in front of me.
You should.
Just give me some more random questions, and
You're really slipping, honey.
I'll proceed to be uninformative, uninfo quench.
You know which way, at least, this typhoon was spinning, because you know what hemisphere it was in.
That's right. It was in the southern hemisphere, which means it was rotating clockwise,
there
just like their
go.
toilets.
Bing,
apparently.
bing, 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 bing.
Okay. Number 5. Hurricane seasons vary across the globe. So in the northern Atlantic Ocean, Our season is June 1st to November 30th.
Yeah.
But it sharply peaks in late August through September.
Yeah.
The statistical peak is September 10th, which is tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
Actually, when we're recording this on Monday, but we'll be releasing it on Tuesday, September 10th, this episode, and that is the statistical peak for hurricane season here.
Wow.
The Northern Pacific has a broader period of activity. And yes, number 6. This one I thought is quite obvious, but maybe not to everybody. Number 6 is that coastal regions are the most at risk.
Yeah, that's pretty obvious.
And the reason is the primary energy source for a hurricane is warm water.
Yes.
That's where it draws its energy from. So as soon as it hits land, it starts to weaken dramatically. You know what I mean? We often see that. We'll watch it sort of approaching.
Yep. And then it like downgrades into a tropical
the eastern
storm.
seaboard, and then, yeah, exactly. Number 7. The actual eye of a hurricane is very warm. So when you're in the center of the hurricane, they're tropical after all. That's where they're created. And it's the eye of the hurricane is formed by air rushing down from the upper levels of the atmosphere to fill the void left by the low air pressure at the surface. So air dries out and warms up as it descends rapidly through the eye toward the surface, making the eye of the hurricane especially warm.
I find it fascinating that you can be in the eye, like you can go through a treacherous hurricane and then be in the eye, and it would be sunny for a little while.
Weird, right?
And then it storms again once the eye passes, right?
They talk about the calm before the storm, but the eye is like the calm in the middle of the storm.
The calm within the storm,
right.
Really.
That's so poetic, honey.
I know.
I love the calm.
You know what I wish I did is I wish I did some research. Maybe you did, but you know, just for some Hollywood movies about hurricanes and stuff. Do you know of any? Do you know many? You love these kinds of films.
I do.
You love the films like that are, you know, natural disasters and stuff.
I do. I don't know why. I don't know why I'm drawn to those types of films. I don't remember one specifically on
There's
hurricanes.
one really famous one where
Ice Storm?
No, not Ice Storm. There's one really famous one where they're storm chasers and they get stuck inside a hurricane and stuff. Like, do you remember that one?
Are you talking about tornadoes or
tornadoes? I guess it probably is a tornado, not a hurricane. You're right.
And that one's with Helen Hunt, and it's called. What's it called?
Talk about putting you on the spot.
Twister.
Yes. But
I love that one.
I guess that's not really
movie.
The same as a hurricane, but I wonder. Yeah, I wonder if there are some famous Hollywood films specifically about hurricanes. Get back to us on social media and let us know.
Isn't there a... Oh, never mind. Number 8.
Never mind indeed.
Say, isn't there a song or something about hurricane?
Well, Lucinda Williams has a line, Junebug versus Hurricane.
Oh, I know who wins that war.
Yeah, I know. That's exactly what she's alluding to, I do believe.
Okay. Number 8.
The futileness of it all, you know?
You can tell a lot about a hurricane by its eye.
Oh, yes.
So a ragged...
Look right into its eye.
A ragged asymmetrical eye means the storm is struggling to strengthen. But if it's a smooth, round eye, it means the storm is stable and strong.
Oh, wow. That's what Dorian had a perfect circular eye, I remember.
And a tiny eye, that's sometimes called a pinhole or a pinpoint eye.
Yeah.
It usually indicates a very intense storm.
Very lots of high winds.
If it's a smaller, when you're looking at that image, if it's got a smaller eye, it indicates it's a more intense storm.
Oh, that's interesting.
So it's not
much. By the end of this podcast, everyone's going to be meteorologists on hurricanes.
Oh, I found this stuff really fascinating. Hopefully our listeners
will
too.
Yeah. Yeah, I do as well. Hopefully our listeners do as well. I'm sure they do. Do you? Well, do you? I'm sure you do.
I don't hear anybody.
Yeah, I know. This is here crickets. Junebug versus hurricane.
Number 9. Some hurricanes have 2 eyes, just like you and I.
Oh, wow. And the eye is, or what? How does it go? Is in the eye of the beholder. What is it? How does that say?
I don't know. There's no eye in teen. There's only one eye in hurricane.
Beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
Oh, that saying.
It's beauty.
Lots of sayings with the letter I in them. And also the
eyes are the windows of the
biological
soul.
eye. Yes. Some hurricanes have 2 eyes, is number 9. And
They have eyebrows, though?
an eye doesn't last forever.
No.
Storms frequently encounter a process known as eye wall replacement cycle.
Hmm.
So it'll develop a new eye wall to replace the old one. So the eye wall is sort of like the edge of the eye of the hurricane.
Yeah.
And it's particularly intense in that wall,
Oh, yeah.
just coming in and out of the eye.
That's where you see like houses going up and down in the funnel.
So hurricanes will go through a replacement cycle. And sometimes, as it's happening, it can temporarily have 2 eyes at the same time.
That's insane. That is an extremely volatile storm. If you had 2 eyes,
It is
double the pack of punch, right?
And as it's sort of making that change, when it's going through an eye wall replacement cycle, it actually weakens during the cycle temporarily, but then can grow even more intense once the cycle's completed. So an example would be Hurricane Matthew scraped by the Florida coast in October of 2016. And the impacts of the storm were slightly less because it was going through an eye wall replacement cycle just as it made its closest approach to land.
I didn't know that. And that was still a devastating storm, even with a weakened eye wall.
Don't quiz me on every detail of that particular hurricane, okay?
Andrew?
No.
What was Andrew's last
Matthew.
name?
It
What
was
was Matthew's last name?
It's Mr. Matthew Hurricane.
Mr. Matthew Hurricane.
I don't know anything more about that storm.
All right.
Okay.
On to the next storm.
Number 10. This I found particularly fascinating. We started naming storms to keep track of them.
Yeah.
I sort of knew that, but the whole background around the naming I found really
fascinating.
Very fascinating. So, as it started, meteorologists in the United States.
You said it right. Good job.
That's not the one I had a hard time with.
Oh, what was it? Meteorological?
Meteorological.
You still can't say it. Meteorological.
Meteorological.
You're forgetting the logical.
You're so logical.
Meteorological.
Meteorological.
Yeah. Watch me be saying it incorrectly here. We'll get like all these nasty emails from meteorologists.
Yeah, they are
saying,
an angry bunch.
What are you guys doing?
They are an angry bunch.
All this fake news. Trump, wrong, sad.
Back to naming hurricanes. Meteorologists in the United States started naming tropical storms and hurricanes to make it easier to keep track. And also, for all of us watching the news, we know what the heck they're talking about. Since then, tropical cyclones have become a worldwide effort in terms of naming. And it's coordinated by the World Meteorological.
You got it. I mean, you get a passing grade with that one.
It's the WMO.
Oh, it's a WMO?
Yes.
Well, how about that?
Yes. It's a United Nations agency. It's responsible for maintaining meteorological standards.
Oh, you did it again. Good. Yes. We need somebody to keep an eye on these meteorological standards.
Don't we all have words that we fumble on?
Oh, yeah.
There's some words that we just can't. Maybe
I don't really have too many, I don't think. But Malaby. I don't know. Malaby I do. I don't know. I can't say Malaby.
I'm going to find one. I'm going to find one that is... Next episode, I'm going to challenge you with an incredibly difficult one to pronounce, and I'll see if you can do it.
I remember my mother has a hard time saying brewery.
Yeah.
Brewery.
Yeah, that can be tricky. Meteorological standards. So today, the Atlantic Ocean and Eastern Pacific Ocean each have their own list of alternating masculine and feminine names, and they reuse them, the 2 lists, every 6 years.
Every 6 years.
So you can go online and you can see the list. So there's the list of names for 2019.
Yeah.
Starting with the letter A at the beginning of the year.
But if it's especially a bastard of a storm, they retire it.
That's right, honey. That would be another one of my
I know.
things.
I had to say it because I find that fascinating. It's like, yeah, that one. How do they decide though when it's too bad? That's what I'm wondering. Like the amount of damage it does. Like how much. How much is too much? Okay. All right. I'm jumping ahead.
Right in the middle of
jumping ahead. All right. So the naming.
So they rotate through. So the list of names that's used this year will be used again in 2025. So 6 years from now, they'll repeat the same list.
Unless it was a bastard of a storm.
Unless it was a bastard of a storm. Hope that doesn't take away our clean rating. See, even Charlie was like, what are you guys doing over there?
You just said bastard in kitty language.
So they use the letters A to W.
A to W.
In terms of the naming. But they skip Q and U.
Huh.
And if
Why?
they end
You
up
could
using...
have Hurricane Quinn or
maybe
whatever.
they just couldn't come up with 6 Q names to have their full 6 lists.
Okay.
So if all the names on the list are used in the course of a year, then they move to the Greek alphabet, letters of the Greek alphabet, to start naming them.
There's already like 2 or 3 past Dorian.
There's a whole committee with the WMO that vote on these names.
Yeah.
And they are also the committee that votes on when to retire.
Okay.
I do want to give a little bit of credit, though, to the first usage of personal names for any weather system. And it was a guy in Queensland, down in Australia, meteorologist Clement Wragg, who named systems in the late 1800s to early 1900s. And he sort of started it all, the whole idea of naming. Clement Wragg.
I wonder if there's ever been a hurricane called Clement.
I don't know.
Name a hurricane after himself. He's having a bad day, you know?
Well, the reason I was so interested in the naming is because I had this discussion with a coworker. I'm like, why did we have Dorian, after Aaron? Because we had Hurricane Aaron actually hit.
Yeah, it's when it forms.
Right. So Dorian had actually formed back on August 24th originally. Yeah. So it had formed and was named. Aaron didn't form until August 26th. So Aaron hit us faster, and Dorian was much slower progression.
Here's a question. Like, when a hurricane forms at sea, how do they first categorize it as a hurricane? Does it have to have a certain
wind speed?
A certain wind speed, so they can just track that without even having to go there, obviously.
Yeah, there's a whole chart, the Beaufort scale, where they measure wind speeds.
Oh, look at you.
I know. Well, there's
pulling
a lot
out the meteorological terms.
Then they look at a combination of sustained winds that are 10 minutes or more, and then wind gusts that are 1 minute or less.
Okay.
And they look at, there's a combination of those factors is put into a table, and it was agreed upon. It's used worldwide, and then that's how they categorize the various intensities of
Here's
storms.
another question that I would love to know the answer to.
Yes.
Is how many hurricanes start at sea and never make it to land and are named? That happens a lot. Probably more percentage of hurricanes that don't reach land than do, I bet you.
Well, if you think about the fact that they possibly can move through the entire alphabet list in the course of a year.
Yeah.
And we don't really hear about that many of them.
So a lot of them just die when they hit colder water at sea, basically. Which is interesting.
They just may never make landfall.
Yeah, they just go nonstop.
Why don't you research that, Hun, and you can let us know. You could give us an update on the next.
I research nothing.
You just throw all these questions at me.
It's okay. They're questions for our listeners as well, if they want to do some research themselves and do our work for us, and then let us know on social media, anywhere on social media. We're on everything except for Snapchat. We're not on Snapchat.
No. Is anybody on Snapchat?
A lot of people, the younger generation are, honey. Okay. We're not.
We are not. We don't qualify as younger generation. My 11th interesting fact. This is very fascinating, and Jeff didn't spoil it at all.
No.
Names are retired if a storm is especially destructive.
You know, that's the only thing that I knew when we were talking about hurricanes. You mentioned that, so I remembered it. I thought you might forget it, so I thought I'd mention it before it got forgotten.
Hey, I'm just glad you were listening.
Yeah.
So if it is particularly destructive or deadly storm, the meteorological...
You're getting so much better at that. You're almost there.
Yes, the World Meteorological Association organization. Now I can't even say the easy word.
Oh, you're doing fine.
The WMO. They vote and they retire it, and they do this because it's out of respect for the families of the victims of the storm, and for the survivors of the storm as well.
So how many storms have been retired, or do you know that? Like how many were so bad?
Since they originally started naming it hurricanes for the Atlantic Ocean, so more than 80 names have been retired.
80 names.
80 names.
Wow. Andrew being one, I'm sure. And
once they retire, I don't have the 80 memorized, but
why? Why? You're supposed to be prepared.
Of course, Katrina is one.
Yeah, Katrina. It's the worst one that I've probably ever seen in my life on TV, of course, but still. The one that's happened while I was still alive was probably Katrina.
Well,
that one was devastating.
So when a name is retired, that name is then has to be replaced. So again, that same organization. Are you ready for it?
Yeah.
The World Meteorological Organization.
Close. You almost did
I'm just going to say it so fast.
Just say WHO.
WMO.
Who
That's the World Health Association Organization. Oh my God.
I really want to know. Uh-oh, we're going to get sued by who?
Stop your singing.
Who's on first? Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Stop your singing. Yeah, that actually finishes my interesting facts, but I did want to, since we have a little extra time, talk about the deadliest tropical cyclone on record.
Okay.
And it was in 1970, the Bola cyclone, and it killed around 300,000 people.
Wow. And where did it make landfall?
So it struck a densely populated the Ganges Delta region of Bangladesh.
Oh, in India.
And that was on November 13th.
Bangladesh, yeah.
Bangladesh, yeah. No, sorry, not Bangalore.
No,
Is
yeah.
that what you were
That's
thinking?
what I was thinking, yeah.
I know,
sorry.
I can read your mind so well.
I know.
In Bangladesh, and on November 13th, 1970. And you'd mentioned storm surge, and that the powerful storm surge from that storm is what was responsible for the high death toll.
There wouldn't have been too much for early warning either back in the 70s. It's not like people are getting messages on Facebook saying that there's a big hurricane coming. How else would you have known, right? So I wonder what kind of early warning system they had in the earliest of hurricanes, you know. Well, earliest ones, they wouldn't have had any. It would just showed up and obliterated everything. It's like, oh, this is a really bad storm. Oh, it's getting worse. There goes a house, you know. It's like, that's the way it would have been back, you know, before they had any warning systems.
Well, I know we don't even think about how lucky we are to have the warning systems that we have in place now. When we think about things like our tsunami warning systems that we have and what we're able to detect and how far in advance. I mean, we often get a little impatient when we're watching predictions on television and the, you know, it's, you know, the storm takes another twist or shifts direction and it's not completely accurate, but just the fact that we know it's out there and can prepare mentally and get our homes prepared.
Well, I'm going to make a prediction. I think that hurricanes are just going to get more and more prevalent because of global warming. The air or the water that used to be cold is getting warmer, and it'll give more strength to hurricanes when they hit that warmer water.
Where are you pulling this information from?
I'm just saying that I think that's what's going to happen. It's because the water is getting warmer.
Are you going to accompany this information with like a? Are you going to do a Sharpie drawing of the?
No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to pull a Trump. I'm just going to get a Nobel Prize, 10 years from now for saying it on this podcast because I think that's what's happening. And that's just, don't go and quote me or write any scientific papers on what I'm saying because it's, it's not meteorologically sound.
Oh, look at you showing off. You even added an extra syllable in there.
I know. I said Lee.
You know what? I don't think you're the first person to come up with this crazy.
No, of course not. But I think that's what's happening. I think that's why hurricanes are getting closer and closer to us, like more prevalent. We had, I don't know, probably 20, 30 trees that just toppled in this hurricane. That's sustained winds. We're not used to that here at all.
No.
They are in Nova Scotia, because Nova Scotia, in a weird way, a buffer for us.
I think it's not just. I mean, we've had intense storms, but the frequency has definitely increased as well.
Yeah.
So, thank you for listening, everybody.
Stay safe.
You've learned a little bit something about hurricanes.
Yes.
Or learned how badly I pronounce certain words.
Yeah.
At least on this episode.
Thanks for listening to InfoQuench.
I will recover on the next one. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening.
Be sure to visit InfoQuench.com to subscribe and catch up on past episodes.
You can also check out InfoQuench on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Till next time.